Welcome back to Yahoo Finance Live. The recent cancellation of the Department of Defense's JEDI contract, putting into focus the big opportunity in public cloud infrastructure as a service. Morgan Stanley says that space is expected to grow nearly 30% over the next few years. Let's bring in Keith Weiss. He is Morgan Stanley's senior analyst. And Keith, you've got this note out, which is quite interesting because oftentimes we talk about Amazon, Microsoft, and Google Cloud as the big names, but you've kind of taken a deeper dive into the entire stack. How do you think investors should be looking at this opportunity, whether it is in cloud computing, cloud networking, the list goes on?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for having me on the show. Cloud computing is part of a broader sort of digital transformation initiative that's going on across enterprises of all sizes. So there's a good demand environment for software overall, particularly around your front office applications, the data powering those applications, and then you need to power that all, right? And that's where cloud computing comes into the equation of how you power that all. We're not going to do it in on-premise environments anymore with servers. More so, we're going to go to these big vendors like an Azure and AWS or Amazon's Web Services or Google Cloud Compute to get that underlying power. So from our perspective, you have to look at both sides of the equation. The underlying platform players are going to do very well. So the Azures are going to do very well, but also enterprises are going to use best of breed technologies on top of that. Technologies like Snowflake for data warehousing or Databricks for machine learning type of algorithms. And in our survey work, CIOs are split pretty evenly between using basically soup to nuts, a public cloud vendor, and using best of breed technology on top of that underlying infrastructure as a service. So we think there's plenty of room for both of these types of players to succeed in this market.
Now, I guess I just want to follow up by asking, where are the really important markets for these players? Because we saw the government contract with the JEDI kind of, the government wants to rethink, if you will, how they approach that contract. So how important, though, is that revenue? Because we didn't see the shares of either Amazon or Microsoft really move too much off of the DoD's announcement. Is the real space kind of in private companies? Where do you see the most important market share for this industry going forward?
Right. So I think in the example of the change in the JEDI contract, I think the reason why you didn't see the stocks move very much on that is the opportunity doesn't go away. It's just changing in sort of the nature of the contracting. The DoD is definitely still very much on board with the idea we're going to use these cloud computing resources on a going forward basis. This is an important part of how we move forward in terms of how we're using data and how we're sort of running our applications. It's just we're going to contract it differently. It's not all going to go to Microsoft. We're going to use a multi-vendor approach. And even in that release, they said, hey, listen, Microsoft and Amazon are still very well positioned for this contract. We're just going to appropriate it in a little bit of a different way. I think this opportunity is very broad. It's not just about the government. It's not just about large enterprises. We're seeing companies of all sizes. One of the most dynamic parts of the environment right now is actually small businesses. You're seeing small businesses being able to adopt technology more fully. The technology is easier to use. It's less expensive. It's delivered for the cloud. You don't need that technology expertise in-house to be able to utilize it. So the digital transformation is taking place across the board, and it's part of what keeps us so bullish about software right now.
AWS has been so dominant for so long in this space, and yet we've talked a lot about the inroads that Microsoft and Azure has made. When you talk about those opportunities you've laid out, whether it's in government contracts and businesses, enterprise, where do you think the opportunity lies for Microsoft to capture even more of the market share?
Yeah, I think Amazon definitely pioneered in this space. They were first to market with their infrastructure as a service solution and expanding that into platform as a service. And they've done a great job of innovating, continue to push a lot of new solutions, deeper solutions into the marketplace. But Microsoft has been a very effective fast follower. They've closed the gap significantly with Microsoft in terms of breadth and depth of their product functionality. Where Microsoft actually gets inroads, or where they have a competitive advantage is they've had these customer relationships for a long time, particularly when you're talking about larger enterprises. They understand the complexities of these enterprises, both in terms of their technology complexities, what they're already running in-house, and oftentimes there's a lot of Microsoft technology there, but also in terms of how their procurement cycles work, what their compliance and regulatory needs are, what the security needs are. So as the market continues to evolve and mature, and now it's less about the digital natives and small businesses coming into a cloud environment, and is broader and it's about large enterprises coming on board, Microsoft's advantages come more to play of being able to deal with those complexities that these large enterprises deal with the security needs, deal with the compliance and regulatory environments, and know the customer well. That's really the strong suit of Microsoft, and that's where we see them gaining share on a go-forward basis.
And Keith, I want to ask you lastly, it's not just about storage, right? There's a real big market when it comes to business intelligence and analytics as well. So who are the big winners in this space? They don't necessarily have to be the big ones either, right? There are specialty shops that kind of really made a name for themselves off of that specific space that could be winners in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think both in terms of when we're talking about the big public cloud vendors, it's no longer just the infrastructure as a service. The infrastructure would be giving you stuff like compute and storage and networking capability. And that was the starting ground. That's where these businesses got started. On a go-forward basis, those vendors, so AWS and Azure, are also providing data management functionality, security functionality. So they're moving up the stack, if you will, to higher value solutions and trying to get more of those higher value dollars as well. But vendors are also, or sort of enterprises are also going to look to third-party vendors who are specialized in these aspects of data management or security. So a couple of names that we like a lot in this space, I would point to a name like MongoDB, where they do transactional databases. That's the database that developers really like to build new applications on top of. You run MongoDB in a cloud-based environment. So the underlying substrate is still going to be in Azure or a GCP or an AWS, but you're getting that high-value functionality from MongoDB. Data management is a key area. Security analytics is another key area that we're keeping an eye on, that a lot of that's taking place in the cloud as well. And then also the analytics and visualization on top of that is going to be a key area of focus, I think, in the near term as people try to make use of all this data that we now have available to us.
All right, Keith Weiss, Morgan Stanley Senior Analyst. Thanks again for stopping by. Looking forward to the next time we have this conversation.